Deadliest Catch has been a hit since the show debuted on the Discovery Channel in 2005. On top of tracking the personal lives of the crew members and the moments they share, the show focuses on the crew's tragedies and the risks they take. Among the more than 250 ships that make up the crab fishing fleet on the Bering Sea, the Wizard boat has one of the largest capacities for King and Opilio crab. On this sailing quest, the Wizard crew lures their biggest cage of crabs. How big is the catch? Join us as we delve into the Wizard crew's biggest cage of crabs ever. The Wizard's biggest catch. Like every other day, the crew of Wizards is on the water, showered by the ocean, trying to get their target for the day. The crew members are highly motivated. They release the cage into the water, anticipating the result, just to see that they have caught starfish. Instead, the captain, still motivated, joked about knowing where hotspots for starfish are, if they ever need any. Over the past decade, the captain has fished in these areas and is sure that the hotspot has changed. They have gotten 2 dungeon carbs and about 600 pounds of starfish so far. They put the cage back into the water, and it came out blank this time, which isn't fun for anyone. Jacob has been relieved of tying the Kirag bench after he made the team lose 1 pod, which got the captain to demote him. He is ambitious and wants to become a captain one day. Captain Keith respects his decision, but says the only way to get into the captain's chair is to earn his way. Jacob was seen complaining about their work, which seemed like wasted work, and they hadn't caught anything worth his time. The only reason he was working there was for money. The team was about to catch some crabs, just a few, and Captain Keith needed to do a TC check to see what was happening in the tank. He called Monty, the relief captain, to handle the driving as he went down to the team. He checked out the crabs while Jacob walked up to him and said he liked the bait, and the captain told him that was nice because he was going to be there for a while. Jacob responded that it was good because it was far away from where the captain was, and said he shouldn't blame him for what happened. Captain Keith yelled at him, saying he had already started the day this way. Jacob said it wasn't his fault and was already happy with where he'd been demoted. The captain doesn't like how he's talking now and has him return to his room. Keith then heads to the remaining crew and tells them that Jacob is no longer part of the team and that they are officially a 4-man, 4-main deck. He then went back to driving, complaining about not having a pleasant morning recently. While the remaining team kept working, their workload seemed to have increased by 25%, so everyone had to step up to fill in for the missing person. Jacob is back in his room, saying he has to quit and run his boat. The captain made it personal and did that to him the day before, making him angry. He then starts packing his things, and the captain is convinced that they are at high odds somewhere where they are, and makes it a plan by starting from the bottom and making their way up the hill until they find what they need. After benching, Jacob is seen washing the dishes, saying he has to help his crew members in any way he can because he likes the crew members. Captain Keith finds stacking and setting all 150 pods difficult for the remaining deckhands, and the team needs to be more worn out. Taylor, a deckhand, has been the one working the most, moving the bait and hanging it up in the cage. Seeing this, Captain Keith called everyone for a quick discussion in the house, and he said to Jacob that his absence had given everyone 25% more workload. As the ship's captain, it was disrespectful to him that he was running the ship with his mouth and had no respect for him. Keith told him that if he wanted to continue working on the ship, he had to start listening to his orders. Jacob accepted his mistake and apologized to Keith and the crew, asking if he could help the guys out. Keith accepted his apology, and the whole crew resumed fishing once more. Keith hopes Jacob can do what he asked of him because a member can only get 3 strikes to be fired, and he already has 2. He hopes he becomes a member of the Wizard. Jacob changed and joined the crew, working together as they offloaded the biggest pod they had seen in the season with 234 crabs. The whole crew was happy with the result. Keith is happy that Jacob made the right decision to work together with the crew because being a team is about working together and not working alone, and that is the only way they can succeed. The Vessel Wizard. With a single diesel oil power engine, one rudder, and one propeller, the Wizard is a single-deck crab fishing boat intended for ocean service. Ira Bushy and Sons Incorporated of Brooklyn, New York constructed the vessel in 1945 as a yard oiler in line with a U.S. Navy design. The ship was shut down after duty in the Navy and had been tied in Boston Harbor until September 1, 1974. The ship was sold to a private company in 1974 and spent 8 months as a molasses carrier. John Jorgensen bought it in 1978, and Bender Shipbuilding in Mobile, AL, adapted it as a crab fishing boat. In 1978, a bow thruster was added. Since the transformation, the ship has participated in Bering Sea crab harvests. The vessel's hull is made entirely of welded steel and has a circular stern. The ship is divided into 3 levels: the main deck, areas beneath the main deck, and an upper level called the one deck, which has a wheelhouse. Anchor gear and moorage gear are carried on the one deck, which is also the top level of a full-width deck enclosure. Aft, with a raised partial-width deckhouse serving as a navigation bridge ahead, the main deck has been moved forward to make room for a bait locker and a chain locker. The weather deck aft has fishing equipment, deck cranes, and hatches for the holds and machinery spaces below. The hold or machinery deck is separated into 13 main waterproof sections underneath the deck. A saltwater support tank is located forward of the crash bulkhead. The refrigeration machinery compartment and bow thruster follow aft, with a double-bottomed potable water tank underneath. The port and dry starboard holds are located next to each other. Equipment and machinery for refrigeration are also kept in the port hold. Next aft are 2 port and 2 starboard flooded holds arranged on the sides of the center line, with double-bottom fuel tanks below, typically kept pressed with fresh water. Next is an engine room with main propulsion machinery, electrical power generation plants, bilge, fresh water, fuel system, and other ancillary machinery, as well as non-integral lube oil and hydraulic oil tanks, integral freshwater tanks, integral fuel oil wing, and day tanks. Aft is a steering gear compartment with a freshwater peak tank below. The Wizard is a 155 feet by 30 feet vessel commissioned to be built by the U.S. Navy in 1945 in Brooklyn, New York, by the Ira S. Bushy Shipyard. Her original name is an International Marine Organization number YO-210. She is one of the few remaining YO-153 class vessels. After World War II, she was laid in mothballs in Boston Harbor. In the last few decades, oiler fleets have been used as a target practice or for building artificial reefs off the eastern seaboard. YO-210 was eventually purchased and made one trip unsuccessfully as the Clifford K. hauling molasses before being purchased by John Jorgensen in 1978 to be converted to a fishing vessel to fish crab in the Bering Sea. The boat was then renamed the Wizard after his grandfather's long liner, one of the premier cod and halibut boats in the Seattle fleet of the early and mid-20th centuries. John's father and grandfather were Norwegian immigrants in the pioneer days of the Alaskan commercial fishing industry, and John started working for them at a very young age. Bender Shipyard in Louisiana converted the Wizard to a crabber in 1978, from where John and his family sailed her through the Panama Canal and on to Seattle, where Marco Shipyard finished the conversion. She originally had 8 tanks for carrying oil cargo and a capacity of 240,000 gallons. During the conversion, 2 of the tanks were eliminated to increase the size of the engine room to hold added generators and a saltwater circulation system. 4 original tanks are used as live holding tanks for crab, and the 2 forward tanks are used for dry storage and refrigerated seawater units. The house and living quarters were increased, and a substantial amount of hydraulics for the 2 cranes and crab pot hauling equipment were added. In 2005, when the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, under the Department of Commerce, enacted the Crab Rationalization Program, vessels in the Bering Sea were awarded IFQs, individual fishing quotas. The Wizard's King and Opilio crab allocations were among the highest in the Bering Sea for an individual boat. The fishing vessel Wizard began fishing for crab in 1979, during what is now known as the king crab heyday of the late 1970s. She targeted primarily the Bering crab, known as a tanner, and the fledgling Opilio crab, known as snow, throughout the 1980s. In the late 1980s, when king crab had recovered and Opilio quotas surged to phenomenal levels, the Wizard routinely was one of the top 10 crab producers in the Bering Sea, in a fleet that would sometimes be as large as 270 vessels. Keith Colburn learned the ropes of becoming a proficient crab captain. John Jorgensen sold the vessel to Keith Colburn in July of 2005. John maintains a close relationship with Keith, who harvests his IFQ allocation and that of several other IFQ crab holders, all through lease agreements. The Wizard is now working with another boat in the Alaska Crab Producers Cooperative, an inter-cooperative exchange sub-district, and the Bering Sea's largest harvest cooperative. The Wizard reaches its crab goal. Despite equipment challenges, the Wizard crew is determined to reach its crab goal. The first pot they pulled was filled with crabs, which excited the crew members. Feeling motivated, Jacob started singing, and the whole crew joined in on the flow. The second pot, released into the ocean, came back up, filled with crabs. The whole crew couldn't stop smiling because of the excitement. The weather started to change. Jacob tied the pots down tight so they could be safe because the weather might worsen later. As expected, the weather changed for the worse, so Keith told the crew to move the pots to a different place to be safer. But Jacob said that he already tied them down, so nothing would happen to them. Robbie, a deckman having issues with how Jacob tied his knot, thinks that the knot might not hold the pots down, but Jacob assures them that the knot will hold the pots down well, so they decide to trust him. Surprisingly, the knots worked well and saved the pots, which reinstalled Jacob back in the stacks. The crew went back to fishing for crabs, and luckily, they kept getting pots full. It seemed like their lucky day because they had hit their target. With his tanks brimming and his 170 pot stack acting as a sail, the Wizard's crab numbers are at the top of the fleet. Keith Colburn's production is something that many other captains aim to achieve, regardless of whether it is in the traditional derby format or under the new individual fishing quota system. Under the command of Captain Keith or Deputy Skipper Monty Colburn, the Wizard consistently ranks among the top 10 vessels in the fleet for crab output. Keith's resume reveals that in 2002, he set a record by bringing in 540,000 pounds of Opilio crab in a year, when the usual harvest was just 130,000. His bold decision to fish along the ice pack made this possible. The fact that the Wizard has produced the most snow crab since 1999 and that Colburn produced the second highest amount of king crab out of around 200 captains between 1996 and 2000, captains on season 17 of Deadliest Catch tried to work together to meet the 2020 to 2021 king crab quota under the existing individual fishing quota system. As it turned out, the partnership fell apart rapidly when the captains realized they weren't receiving accurate information, giving Captain Keith another chance to shine. Colburn said in a special interview with Nikki Swift that their alliance was important to them. But by the quota, the Wizard got 116,000 pounds, which was more crab than all the other Deadliest Catch boats, and those guys won't even give you a sniff of anything hot. With numbers like that, it doesn't seem like Colburn was desperate for the information. The Wizard crew. The Captain Keith Colburn. Known for his spicy temper, sometimes overly dramatic tendencies, and ability to fill enormous quotas, Wizard Captain Keith Colburn might be the most successful self-made crabber in the fleet. While most captains and crew members got into crabbing through bloodlines, in 1985 at 22, the completely inexperienced Colburn decided to catch a plane up to Kodiak, Alaska, and take over the Bering Sea. Beginning as a true greenhorn, Colburn began his crabbing journey on the 135-foot Alaska Trader. As we've seen countless times on Deadliest Catch, Most greenhorns are just hoping to stave off seasickness long enough to get completely battered physically, mentally, and emotionally. Colburn, however, immediately began to thrive, and in just 3 years he became a full-share deckhand on none other than the Wizard. Colburn must love the Wizard since, as a deckhand, a first mate, and now owner-captain, he's been on that vessel for more than 30 years and counting. Wherever he ranks on your list of favorite captains, there's no denying Colburn's ability to convey the life of a crabber while getting the job done. Keith Colburn revealed that in 1985, before that crabbing light bulb went on, he'd been working in a French restaurant since he was 14, and he'd risen to the rank of sous chef by the time he was 21. Living in Lake Tahoe, California, whenever Keith wasn't in the kitchen, his original goal was to become a chef. But after hearing about the possibilities of big money in the modern-day Wild West of Alaskan crab fishing from a guy in high school, ironically, his abilities in the kitchen helped him secure a spot on the Alaska Trader. He explained that I worked in Alaska for room and board for the first 6 weeks. When I first got on the boat, one of the things that kept me on the boat was being able to cook. According to Keith, the learning curve was steep since, for one thing, his nice French restaurant was never once sloshed around by 20-foot waves. In 2005, Alaskan crab fishing was flipped on its head. To regulate overfishing, the industry transitioned from a derby style, where many independent vessels raced to catch crab, to the new individual fishing quota system. This meant that larger, more established boats were given quotas to fill, while the quotas of smaller boats needed to be bigger to even cover their expenses. This rationalization process reduced the fleet from around 250 boats to roughly 80. That year, Keith Colburn and his wife and business partner Florence purchased the Wizard from John Jorgensen to ensure a spot as one of the surviving boats. This was a risky choice because there was no guarantee they would receive any quota. They trusted that the Wizard's size of 156 feet and Colburn's knack for filling it would be enough to secure that all-important quota. Captain Keith told the Discovery Channel, "There are crab vessels that are 165 feet, but what is unique to the Wizard is her capacity. She holds over 400,000 pounds of crab in her tank. There are larger boats with more pots, but the Wizard holds the most crabs in the fleet." Keith and Florence Colburn's gamble paid off, as not only was the Wizard allotted quota, but their Opilio crab allocations ranked in the top 10, and their king crab ranked in the top 5 in the entire fleet. The relief captain, Monty Colburn. Monty made his way north just 2 years after his older brother Keith got a crash course in crab fishing off remote St. Paul Island in the dead of winter. Monty's introduction to the Bering Sea took place on the deck of the crabber Juno, a partner vessel to the Alaska Trader that Keith was working on. Monty's first year in Alaska was a marathon that lasted 10 months before he took his first extended shore leave. From Monty's very first day in Alaska, his career has consisted of one adventure after another. In 1988, he joined Keith aboard the Wizard as a full-share deckhand. When Keith took over in the wheelhouse a few years later, Monty became deck boss. Monty earned his Coast Guard mate's license in 1992 and upgraded to a master's in 1995. By then, Keith and Monty began operating the Wizard full-time as captain and relief captain mate. For a time, Monty took command of a succession of his crab boats, allowing him to gain captain's experience and operate his boats in partnership with Keith aboard the Wizard. The brothers are often at odds on how things should be run, so look for tension on board. Though they differ, Keith has voiced full trust in Monty's ability, often noting that his brother is one of a few guys in the fleet with a master's 1,600-ton captain's license. Monty is excited for the season to start, having just rebuilt the whole engine on the Wizard, about a $100,000 job. He may be the only person on the Wizard capable of calming his erratic brother, but it remains to be seen how much autonomy Monty has earned in Keith's eyes. Last Bering season, Monty fished out of bounds, costing the Wizard time and money. Luckily, Monty got off with only a small fine, but Keith could decide this enough to keep him out of the captain's chair he had his eyes on. The deck boss, Gary Soper. Gary has lived most of his life near the ocean. He moved to Alaska as a boy and began fishing early on. Deck savvy and tough, Gary is Captain Keith's most reliable crewman. Known as Soper, Gary is a full-time professional crabber currently serving as deck boss and first mate. Gary has been with the Wizard for over 20 years. Early on, he worked as a deckhand alongside both Keith and Monty. More recently, he's been in charge of deck operations and drives the boat at night when the Wizard operates around the clock. He also maintains and manages both the deck and the crab pots. A bit grizzled and quiet, Soper is the consummate fisherman. Captain Keith sees the anchor as symbolic of what Soper represents on board. A solid, dependable team player who has helped build the business with unwavering dedication. The grizzled and hardened hand is known for his relentless hazing of greenhorns. As a mainstay on the Wizard, Soper receives the entire crew's respect. He's not sure if Keith will hand over the helm to Monty this season, but he does prefer Monty's laid-back management style. Expect another tireless season on deck, accompanied by the dry quips and commentary this deck boss is known for. As a longtime crew member and friend, Gary is part of the Wizard's heart and soul. Kelvin Stafford Deckman. Kevin is an ambitious young deckhand with experience in other fisheries. He had yet to spend time on a crab boat before the 2011 Opilio season. Like Roger, Kevin set foot on a crabbing boat when he joined Keith's crew. The captain took a shine to the horn and immediately praised Kevin for picking up the mechanics of crabbing so quickly. Kevin's claim to fame and legitimacy qualifies him as a man of the sea, sailing solo to Polynesia in a 28-foot sailboat. That accomplishment earned him points with the Wizard crew and Captain Keith, and his ability to learn quickly increased his standing. This year will be Kevin's third stint on the Wizard. He's a tough worker who looks forward to seeing the crew, but just wants to grind out the season to earn a living. Ever the professional fisherman, he works away through the crab season to live a secluded life. He recently applied for his captain's license, but Kevin claims he'll keep any long-term goals off the Wizard's deck. However, watch for competition between Roger and Kevin as they fiercely desire to climb the ranks. Freddie Mwagatai Deckman. Since joining the Wizard, Freddie has seamlessly meshed with the stout crew. The first one on deck and the last one to leave, this Samoan stud's work ethic is exactly what Captain Keith wants in a deckhand, though that doesn't mean Freddie is a no-nonsense guy himself. A former hand on the Cornelia Marie, Freddie brings positive energy to the Wizard crew, embodied by his cod blood bath ritual at the season's start and the mohawk haircuts he gives his fellow deckhands for good luck. Freddie wears his emotions on his sleeve, and his attitude is a good barometer for the mood on deck. He's known to be particularly harsh on greenhorns, but for the most part, Freddie has a fun-loving attitude that helps alleviate any stress on the Wizard's deck. Freddie knows his captains and figures Keith will hand over the helm at least once to his younger brother, Monty. Freddie's good nature jives naturally with Monty's more laid-back attitude. Look to Freddie for great positive moments on deck. Roger Schlosstein Deckman. When Roger joined the Wizard as a greenhorn during the record-setting 2012 Opie season, he manned the bait station efficiently and quickly proved himself a self-motivator on deck. He even received a rare AT boy from Keith over the hailer for his excellence on deck and earned himself a 0.5% raise in just 6 days. Roger worked as a salmon fisher before joining Keith's crew, but his most valuable asset isn't his experience, it's his attitude. He earned a coveted Wizard jacket at the end of the season, a sign that Keith sees Roger as a long-term guy for his company. With the ability to work the rail, count crabs, and help in the engine room, Roger has earned the full respect of the crew over the past 2 years. Last summer, Roger spent 2 months with Lenny and the mechanics on the Wizard rebuilding the engine. The Wizard's usually disagreeable engineer, Lenny, has taken Roger under his wing and trained him in the engine room every time there has been a breakdown. As Lenny ages, Roger wants to learn more and eventually take over when the veteran retires. He looks forward to this year's King season, and remains prepared for the icy grind of Opies. Roger's hard work and excellent attitude have made him a respected member of the Wizard crew. Captain Keith Colburn built a $1 million business out of his final $50. Keith rode his luck and developed the Wizard into one of the most powerful vessels in the fleet during World War II. But some costs come with every win and every sacrifice. What do you think about the Wizard ship's capabilities? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more videos like this.